In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it is said that one should receive the teaching of Lord Chaitanya with intellect and full senses, so that one can logically understand the great mission. I know the verse, but I don't know the Bengali. Somebody remembers the Bengali for that very well-known verse? The Kaviraj Goswami says that if you're indeed serious about logic and argument, please apply them to the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and you'll find them very wonderful. That's the reference here. So you have intelligence, you have senses. So we don't say abandon them. Use them. Use your good sense. Use your intelligence. Be sensible, and apply your faculties to examining the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In the impure state of the living being, the various senses are fully engaged in mundane affairs. If the ear is not engaged in the service of the Lord by hearing about him from Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, certainly the holes of the ear will be filled with some rubbish. We have to hear something. If we associate with devotees, we'll hear about Krishna. If we associate with materialists, we'll hear about rubbish. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Daya Koroha Vichar Korite Chitte Pave Chamatkar. If you're indeed interested in logic and argument, kindly apply them to the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. If you do so, you will find it strikingly wonderful. Yes. So the messages of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam should be preached all over the world very loudly. When there's kirtan, you can't hear the rubbish because the kirtan takes over. It's very nice. And when there's loud kirtan, people hear it. And when they hear it, they become purified. So kirtan, which means the holy name, the glories of the Lord, his form, his qualities, should be preached very loudly. That is the duty of a pure devotee who has actually heard about them from the perfect sources. Interesting, I think here, at the time of writing this, I don't know that Srila Prabhupada had even left Vrindavan yet. If he had, he hadn't gone further than New York. But he's advocating that this preaching should go on all over the world. Just see his vision. All over the world, this preaching should go on. Not sitting in one corner and satisfied with a few disciples and a building and some property. But this message should be preached very loudly. That's the duty of a pure devotee, loudly all over the world. Many want to speak something to others, but because they're not trained to speak on the subject matter of Vedic wisdom, they're all speaking nonsense, and people are receiving them with no sense. So that goes on. People, they have some tendency to speak about dharmic topics, but they're not trained in the science of Krishna. And so they speak speculatively, speculatively. So that won't help us. They want to speak wisdom, but they don't have wisdom. There are hundreds and thousands of sources for distributing mundane news of the world, and people are also receiving it. Similarly, the people of the world should be taught to hear the transcendental topics of the Lord, and the devotee of the Lord must speak loudly so that they can hear. So that, say, as Prabhupada wrote someplace else in Bhagavatam, it's a cultural presentation for the re-spiritualization of human society. So that involves using whatever means are available to broadcast this sensible message of Krishna, so that the ear holes of the human being, which are now being filled with rubbish, can be purified, can give oral reception to the transcendental sound. And that goes from the ear to the heart. What is that? There's a verse in third canto where it's said that the transcendental sound of Krishna, glorification of Krishna, or Krishna's qualities and so on, act like autumnal rains on pools of water. So that means that those pools become very pure and very pure and still and beautiful by the effect of those light rains. So that similarly, the heart of the fortunate person who hears the message of Krishna becomes purified in that way and peaceful, satisfied. That's it. Pravishta karna randrena. You could find that verse for me. It's Svanam. Just get the whole verse for me, if you would, Samarpan, and you can post it there. Meanwhile, we have interesting how even our senses belong to Krishna, and it's our mistake to think they're ours to do with as we please. Yes, this is a Kendra Prabhu's point. Quite right. They're Krishna's senses. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvata panipadam tat sarvatokshi shiromukam sarvata shruti malloke sarvamavritya tishtati, in the 13th chapter. The sarvendriya gunabhasham sarvendriya vivarjita. It said Krishna has his ears and panipadam, his hands and legs, his ears, and all of his senses everywhere. And the commentary is that means, among other things, that our senses are his senses. So our senses everywhere are actually Krishna's senses. Yes. In 1 cc purport, Samarpan says, Prabhupada says there are some so-called gurus who don't even go out of their own district, and they call themselves Jagat Guru. Yes, Jagat. By the way, for those who would like to know, Srila Prabhupada wasn't very fond of that term, Jagat Guru. You know, we sometimes hear Jagat Guru, Srila Prabhupada. It's all right, but Prabhupada thought it was a third-class title, Jagat Guru. Every little village guru is Jagat Guru, as pointed out here. So Prabhupada is the first-class title. Jagat Guru is all right, but Prabhupada didn't think much of it. Okay, 285. But Pravishta Karnarandrena Swanam Bhava Suroruham Dhunoti Shamalam Krishna Shalilasya Yata Sharat. Yeah. Pravishta, having entered the ear, Pravishta Karna Randrena, the holes of the ear, Swanam Bhava Suroruham. And I don't know if a translation has been posted, but like sitting on the lotus of the heart. Dhunoti, it purifies the heart. Just as the autumnal sharat, the autumnal pools become purified by that light rain. Oh, I'm sorry, there it is. Radhe has posted the translation. The sound incarnation of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Soul, that is Srimad Bhagavatam, enters into the heart of a self-realized devotee sits on the lotus flower of his loving relationship and thus cleanses the dust of material association, such as lust, anger, and hankering. Thus it acts like autumnal rains upon pools of muddy water. Such beautiful poetry in Srimad Bhagavatam, and not only poetic, but significant. This is the actual nature of the transcendental sound. The sound sits on the lotus flower of his loving relationship with Krishna. Okay. The human tongue is especially given for chanting the Vedic hymns, not for croaking like frogs. The word asati used in this verse is significant. Jivasati durdirikeva sutta. Asati means a woman who's become a prostitute. Asati, she's not chaste. A prostitute has no reputation for good womanly qualities. Similarly, the tongue given to the human being for chanting the Vedic hymns will be considered a prostitute when engaged in chanting some mundane nonsense. Srila Prabhupada also spoke on this verse in Los Angeles, I believe. And quite famously, he imitated the croaking of the frogs. Ka-ka-ka, 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 ka-ka-ka. This is the sound of the mundane, materialistic tongue speaking all kinds of nonsense. Prabhupada said, with the result that the snake hears him and comes and eats him. He's just advertising to death. Here I am. Come get me, 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 come get me. Ka-ka-ka, ka-ka-ka, ka-ka-ka. This is the nature of their mundane vibration. Okay. Parang patta kirita jushtam apyutamangam nanamain mukundam shavo karao na kurute saparyan harer lasat kanchana kankanava. The upper portion of the body, that's Uttamangai, though crowned with a silk turban, kirita, is only a heavy burden if not bowed down before the personality of Godhead, who can award mukti, freedom. And the hands wearing bangles are like those of a dead man, if not engaged in the service of the personality of Godhead. Mm-hmm. Srila Prabhupada begins his purport in an interesting fashion by saying that there are three kinds of devotees. The first class devotee does not see anyone who's not engaged in the service of the Lord, but the second class devotee makes distinctions between the devotees and the non-devotees. The second class devotees are therefore meant for preaching work, and as referred to in the above verse, they should loudly preach the glories of the Lord. Krishnod Kirtana, Gananatana Pura, the Goswamis, Ut Kirtana. They loudly preached. They're so loudly that their vibration is being heard all over the world 500 years later. Ut Kirtana. The second class devotee accepts disciples from the section of third class devotees or non-devotees. Sometimes the first class devotee also comes down to the category of the second class for preaching work. The Prabhupada makes this point sometimes. If you're a first class devotee, no need of preaching. If God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. Everyone's engaged in the service of Krishna. That first class Uttamadarikaya vision. But the second-class devotee sees, here's the devotees, here's the non-devotees, here's the innocent, here are the demons. So he behaves accordingly with the different sections. What does loudly exactly mean, Samarpan asks. Here when Srila Prabhupada says repetitively in the purport and previous purport, loudly preaching, what does loudly mean? Well, good question. First, loudly means loud. That, japa is for ourselves. We generally chant japa a little softly, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. But kirtan is performed loudly. Prabhupada would have a microphone. Prabhupada would chant loudly, go to the park, go to the public places, and chant loudly, so that broadcasting the glories of the Lord. It's not like a little, where I talk to you and I speak, but if I want to, like if you're in the park, you're talking to a friend, so you speak at normal volume, but if you wanted to address people, call attention, then you'd say, ladies and gentlemen, you'd speak loudly. So that's the first thing. Loudly can mean loudly. It means with more decibels. Then loudly can also mean very vigorously. The printing press broadcasts the message of Krishna very loudly, even though the words on the page are apparently silent. Actually, this is loud chanting of the glories of the Lord. Prabhupada said your mridanga party will be heard for, maybe a couple of blocks, but the big mridanga, the printing press, will be heard all over the world. So there's the mridanga, that's part of our loud chanting, but the press is the big mridanga. That means very loud. So that's another meaning of loudly. We use the printing press, we use the technology, the television, the radio, the internet. We use whatever means are available to vigorously broadcast the message of Krishna so that it will be heard all over the world. So that's loudly. And another meaning, it said that actions speak louder than words. So the devotee, by his example, speaks loudly. It's not that he's just loudly chanting, but if you look at what he's doing, it's something else. So louder than words, his actions also loudly announce the glories of the Lord. You missed my question related to loudly. The first question for today's class at the top of the chat box, please, Vijay. Krishna says, all right, at the very top. Okay, not quite the very top. There he is, started. Related to chanting loudly. Some mystics say that meditation should be silent because it's an offering of respect to God. They say that loud meditation is meant for the sentimentalists, the hysterical, diseased ones. I even found in my travelings to the USA, many Hare Krishnas chanting while attempting as much as possible for complete absence of sound. They told me that God and silence are not different. I won't mention their names. My question is, how loud should my japa be? Okay, well, there's two things here. That meditation should be silent because it's an offering of respect to God. Verse, please. Do we have a source for that? Where meditation should be silent because it's offering of respect to God. God says, Satatam kirtayanto mam. The great souls are always doing kirtan. Kirtan doesn't mean silent meditation. Satatam kirtayanto mam yatantas chadridhavrata namasyantas chamam bhaktya nitya yukta pasate. They're doing kirtan. That's not silent. Why does meditation have to be silent? Kriteya Jyayato Vishnu, Tretayam Yajato Makai, Dvarpara Paricharyayan, Kalo Tad Harikirtanat. Meditation is what God wanted in Satya Yuga. That's when silent meditation was the way to offer respect to God. But in Kali Yuga, the way to offer respect to God is by kirtan. That's what God says. You can say what you like, but God says that in Kali Yuga, kirtan, yarapnoti tarapnoti kalod sankirtya keshu. Not only kirtan, but sankirtan, many people together chanting. And when you have many people together, it's going to be loud. So sankirtan, Krishna utkirtana. Yes, why silently? Hysterical diseased persons are, they're the ones who are chanting loudly. But Krishna says, Mahatmanas tu mam partha. The Mahatmas are the ones who are loudly chanting. You're saying sentimental disease, but this is the opinion of a diseased person, that meditation is meant to be silent. Since meditation, not only meditation is meant to be silent, but you should be silent because you don't know what you're talking about. So better to be silent, then no one will know what nonsense you are. You remain silent. That Chanakya Pandit, his statement is there, that a fool is glorified, a well-dressed fool is glorified as long as he keeps his mouth shut. As soon as he opens his mouth, he's at once detected as a fool. So better, if you're going to say these things which are unsupported by Shastra and contradicted by the Lord himself, better that you remain silent. The rest of us will chant loudly. You remain silent. That will be a good proposal. You sit and meditate silently and don't disturb anyone. Sit in the corner and like a good boy and remain silent. And the rest of us will follow Krishna's direction by having loud kirtan. And probably you won't like it, so you'll go away. How loud should japa be? That's another question. Well, Prabhupada said loud enough so that you can hear. That's the standard. Japa is meant for personal meditation. It's not congregational, loud glorification of the Lord. It is our personal meditation. Some devotees will chant more loudly their japas, some will chant more softly. That's up to you. Gurudas says, the transcendental sound vibration is meant to enthuse the devotee and disturb the atheistic, miserly non-devotee. Prabhupada said something to the effect that disturbing the materialist by the pure vibration of the Sankirtan movement is not actually disturbance. This kind of disturbance is bona fide. Kashi said the Sankirtan movement was a disturbance. Yet God is sleeping, the Smarta Brahmin said. This was disturbing him. But Lord Chaitanya fully encouraged. Another thought about loudly. We are encouraged to chant japa loudly to engage the tongue, mind, and ear. Yeah, but japa loudly means something. It doesn't have to mean that it's loud like everyone's driven out of the temple room because your japa is taking over everything. So some adjustment may be there. Also in Bhagavad Gita, Sthane Hrishikesha Tava Prakirtya Jagat Parishyat Yanurajyate Cha Rakshanksi Pitani Dashodravanti Sarve Namasyanti Chasiddha Sangha. O Hrishikesh, master of the senses, Sthane Hrishikesha Tava Prakirtya, your glories are prakirtya, loudly chanted. There's kirtya, prakirtya, very vigorously chanted, loudly chanted. Sthane Hrishikesha Tava Prakirtya. And what's the result? Jagat Parishyat Yanurajyate. The whole world becomes joyful by hearing your glories. But not exactly the whole world. Jagat Pravishyat Yanurajyate Cha. What is that? I just quoted. Rakshanksi Vitani Dashodravanti. But the Rakshasas, the demons, they become fearful or anxious or disturbed by the loud glories of the Lord. Dashodravanti, and they what's the word? Disperse in all directions. Like when we had this experience back in the old days at 26 2nd Avenue, we had couple of apartments back in the days when in that neighborhood you would get an apartment for like $40 a month. Now I think if you want an apartment in that area, it's in the neighborhood of $2,000 to $3,000 a month. But back then it was maybe $40. The expensive ones were $60 a month. And they came replete with unlimited numbers of cockroaches. And we had such apartments for the brahmachari ashram. You turn on the light and you'd see all the cockroaches scattering when the light was turned on. So Rakshansi Vitani Dashodravanti, when the glories of the Lord are loudly chanted, then the demons become fearful and they take off in all directions. But Sarve Namasyanti Chasiddha Sangha, but the perfect persons all offer you their obeisances. And Vijay Krishna congratulated Gurudas. Very wonderful contribution. Thank you very much. Okay. So we've talked about the second class devotee serving as the spiritual master for the preaching to the third class devotees. The common man, who's expected to become at least third class, is advised herein to visit the temple of the Lord and bow down before the deity, even though he may be a very rich man or even a king with a silk turban or a crown. The third class devotees, what is that? Harchaye, Eva, Hariye. The third class devotees are those who only see themselves in the Lord. They don't appreciate the other devotees very much. So they're sometimes deprecated, but in relationship to the materialists, third class is good. The third class is good. So one should at least become third class by going to the temple, bowing down before the deity, even if you're a king, even if you're a rich man. You should make it a point to go see the deity, bow down to the Lord in the temple, is the worshipable form. He's never stone or wood. So he shows favor to the fallen souls by his presence, and one realizes the presence of the Lord. So the first process, hearing, is the essential point. Hearing by all classes of devotees from the authentic sources like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam is essential. When we hear, then we'll understand, oh, this is Krishna. If we don't hear from the right source, if we hear from the wrong source or we don't hear at all, we won't understand what is what. We won't understand what is what. So hearing is essential. The common man, puffed up with material position, doesn't bow down before the deity. He defies the temple worship without knowledge of the science. So he must know that his so-called turban or crown will only succeed in further drowning him in the water of material existence. And Prabhupada explains that a drowning man goes down faster. You're very proud of your crown, your turban, but when you're thrown in the well, then what's the benefit of your turban? It just helps you go down faster. So people are puffed up with their false pride. They have their turbans, their crowns, or what are they called? Mortar boards, those, for the college graduates. I think that's the term, right? Mortar boards. So that can help you go down faster. That now you have all this weight of material qualification on your head, and you think that you're really something, even though you're not educated in the science of Krishna. So then, then you'll speak all nonsense like the frog. Prabhupada said, Hayagriva had made a cartoon to advertise his Bhakti Yoga Club at Ohio State University, and taking advantage of the story of the frog in the well, he'd made a cartoon, or had someone make a cartoon, Dr. Frog, PhD, which Prabhupada liked, and he would speak about Dr. Frog. So Dr. Frog has his mortar board, and he has a head which is full of weighty thoughts of a speculative nature. But the result of that weight is that he goes down faster. And that's the story of the boatman also, the boatman and the scholar, where the scholar knows everything. His head is quite full, but he doesn't know how to swim. And so he dies. So the turban on the rich man is like that. The rich man, or the intellectually puffed up, who is full of mundane scientific thoughts, but he doesn't know the science of God. So he goes down faster. Advancement, in fact, Prabhupada says it, advancement of material science without God consciousness is a heavy load on the head of human society. And so one must take heed of this great warning. Scientists are decorated with mundane knowledge and heavy thoughts and heavy rhetoric too these days, decrying sentimental fools who believe in God. But then Prabhupada says when they're in grip of some disease like cerebral thrombosis, they sink into the ocean of nations by the weight of material acquisition. So that, yes. So the turban or the whatever is decorating your head, your hippie hairs, as Prabhupada would say, or your advancement of mundane science, or your crown, or your turban, whatever it may be, or your afro, or whatever it is that you've got there on your head, in it or on it. It's just a heavy weight. if you don't bow down. That means bowing down means becoming humble. That's actually the first item of knowledge. Amanitva, adambhitva, ahimsa, kshantir, arjuna. Knowledge begins with humility. So people who, they've got degrees, they've got knowledge, they've read so many books, they've spoken in so many places, but they don't have knowledge. They don't have humility. So they don't bow. Why should I bow down before a statue? They don't actually have knowledge. And therefore, it's just like a heavy burden. A common man, if he has no time to worship the Lord, may at least engage his hands for a few seconds in washing or sweeping the Lord's temple. Prataparudra Maharaj, the greatly powerful king of Orissa, was always busy with heavy state responsibilities, yet he made it a point to sweep the temple of Lord Jagannath at Puri once a year during the festival of the Lord. So however important a man may be, he must accept the supremacy of the Supreme Lord. This God consciousness will help a man even in his material prosperity. Prataparudra's subordination before Lord Jagannath made him a powerful king, so much so that even the great Patan in his time couldn't enter Orissa because of the powerful Maharaj Prataparudra. And finally, the king got the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for that reason, that he humbly engaged himself in sweeping before the chariot of Lord Jagannath, even though he was a king. So even though a rich man's wife has glittering bangles made of gold on her hands, she must engage herself in rendering service to the Lord. So the hands that don't engage in Krishna's service are like the hands of a dead man. Even though Kanchana Kankanao Ba, Lasat Kanchana, glittering bangles on the hands, but if your hands with their glittering bangles are not engaged in Krishna's service, they're like the hands of a dead man or a dead woman. Very apt. So in the previous verse, the sages have spoken about knowledge acquiring senses, like the ears, and about the active sense of the tongue. And here again, the head, the hands, if not engaged in Krishna's service, are useless. And like the hands of a dead man, those hands. Can you explain the statement, the second-class devotee accepts disciples from the section of third-class devotees or non-devotees? It appears that second-class is very exalted platform of Diksha Guru. Yeah. The first-class devotee, Prabhupada explains, doesn't preach. From one angle of vision, the Uttamadhikari is the person who sees that everyone's engaged in Krishna's service. So then he doesn't preach. No need. But the second-class devotee sees the devotees, the non-devotees, the innocent, the demons. So what is that? Prema Maitri Kripopeksha. He loves Krishna. He makes friends with the devotees. He's merciful toward the non-devotees or the third-class devotees. And he avoids the demons, ignores them. Is that all right, Samarpan? Madan Gopal says, even in third class, I'm still on the train. So what good is it to remain in the rat race? At the end of the race, even if I win, I'm still a rat. Yes. So So at least become third class. Of course, now you don't even find, there used to be third class in India on the trains. Now you don't find third class anymore. So we should at least try to become, we should try to become second class. Prabhupada gave us that instruction. Don't remain third class. Try to become second class. And first class, that depends on Krishna's mercy, but let us at least try to become second class. But from another point of view, third class is also, that's something Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said. Someone who chants Hare Krishna even once, he's considered to be a devotee. Maybe third class, but how wonderful. Out of millions and millions of people, this person has somehow chanted the holy name of Krishna. So even third class, what is that? Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta. The Rupa Goswami says, at least mentally, we should respect such a person. He's chanting the holy name of the Lord. Tiksheti, yes, what is that? Pranati B. Yeah, thank you. Tikshasti chet pranati B shabhajantamisha. And we should bow down before those who've accepted initiation. Tikshasti chet pranati B. Or Krishneti yasya. I was just seeing, which I'd never seen before somehow, in Upadeshamrita, that the Krishneti yasya giritam means those who've received Harinam initiation. And Dikshasti chet pranati, those who've received what we call Brahminical initiation or Diksha. To them we bow down. And Shrushrushaya bhajana vigya mananya manya. Nindari shunya hridamipsita shangalabdhya. And for those devotees who are very expert in devotional service and have no other business, and who are freed, whose hearts are freed from the ninda, sadhu ninda, tendency to criticize sadhus or to criticize others, and all the other anarthas that go along with that. Their association should be eagerly sought. All right. Anything else here? We have only a couple of minutes more. Krishneti yasya kiritam manasadriyeta tikshasti chet pranati bhishabhajantamisha. Shrushrushaya. Shrushrushaya means hearing in a submissive way, very humbly. That's hearing. Hearing the experienced person speaks and the less experienced person hears. Although sometimes even the less experienced person speaks. Prabhupada said, I'm sitting in our Krishna Balaram temple and I'm hearing the devotees speaking in the evening and I'm appreciating. Not that I only hear from those who are considered the primo devotees, those who are the all-stars. But when we hear the sincere devotees glorifying the Lord, following in the footsteps of the acharyas, then it becomes very pleasing to hear. Even if the devotees are less experienced or not the headline devotees, when they speak in an authorized fashion, glorifying the Lord, it has potency, and we're happy to hear it. All right, so we have 3 minutes left, and we'll hand things over to Madan Gopal Prabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Maharaj. So we'll just make our regular announcements of upcoming speakers. So we have So we've been announcing this series, Pathways to Perfection series. It's a 10-part series on the 9 processes of devotional service. So it was kicked off this past Saturday, by His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. He gave an overview of 9 processes. So every Saturday morning in Eastern Time, 9 a.m. to 10:30, you can join on this YouTube channel, or you can get your Zoom link as well on tinyurl.com, P2Perfection. Or you can go to the Bhakti Center website. I think they have the latest direct link for Zoom. So if you just want to watch, you can go to YouTube channel, tinyurl.com, Temple at BC, Temple at Bhakti Center. So next Saturday we have Radhika Raman Prabhu, who will be focusing on the aspect of Shravanam, hearing, and then the rest of the different limbs of devotional service will be covered by different other speakers. As you can see, a wonderful lineup is there. So please be sure to join. And of course, please go to jswami.info, this is Maharaj's website, for information about, for the link to the Vanaprastha adventure, which happens on Thursdays. And of course, the link to this Zoom is there as well. And we started off with a very wonderful starting session on this personal finance planning for devotees by Vamshidhari Gopal Prabhu. And he gave us some very good tips on how we can, on how we should think about our future, and how we should, think on healthy ways, spiritually healthy ways to think about our money and finances, and ways we can save, and ways we can cut our expenses, and so on. Very nicely done. And the next 3 sessions, he'll go into much more in-depth and very practical ways in which we can accomplish some of these goals. In fact, I already started applying some of these tips, and how you can make 3% on your savings and stuff like that, just like regular instead of earning just so little money on your regular bank account. So some great tips. September 13th, that was last Sunday. And then next 3 Sundays, you have more tips and tricks on how we can financially make our future healthier.
I would just like to say is that what you say is true. He's giving wonderful tips, but there's like a worldview here. That's
Yes.
the one who's not experienced in financial planning. This can really be revolutionary. It can change the whole way you look at money, and the way you interact with money in your life. It can make such a real fundamental change. So it's there's real substance here. I was very appreciative of the first session.
Absolutely.
I'm encouraging disciples to tune in, and I think grihastas, and not just those who are like at the tail end of vanaprastha life, but at any section of tail end of grihastha life, but in any section, can really benefit from this knowledge. If you're coming in late, and you don't know these things, it's like, how did I miss all this? You come in on the ground floor of grihastha life, and you have these tools and these understandings. It can make a big difference.
It's a fundamental shift in perspective, and seeing all these financial things from the spiritual aspect, on how we can use it and change our mindset so that we have a healthy relationship with Lakshmi Devi, and using Krishna's service, and just changes our whole, and making an understanding that this is actually part of our devotional service, and how we can use this tool, this energy of the Lord in His service in a way that is healthy. It's really quite wonderful. So please do join. The recording is available on our regular Zoom, our regular YouTube channel. So if you missed the last one, you can watch it on the YouTube channel. And please make a note of this. This is the link for the Zoom ISKCON NJ seminar. That's tinyurl.com, ISKCON NJ seminar. So that's the link, and it's on Sundays 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. All right, and upcoming speakers. So of course, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we have the Bhagavatam second canto with His Holiness Jayadvaita Swami Maharaj, as always. And then on Tuesday, which is tomorrow, we have Sudharma Mataji from Alachua. And on Thursday, His Holiness Bhakti Purushottam Swami Maharaj, and on Sunday, His Holiness Raj Swami Maharaj. So please be sure to join and take part in these upcoming sessions. So we look forward to seeing you. Thank you very much. I'll leave this channel open for another few seconds so we can all collectively unmute ourselves and thank Maharaj if you like. Hare Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Bol.
Hi, Maharaj. Thank you.
Hare
Oh,
Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Bol, Hare Krishna, thank you, Maharaj.
Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna Maharaj Dandvat Hari Bol.
Hari Hari.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you very much for the wonderful class. Hare Krishna.
Raji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavad Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna, Raji.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.